The restaurant was quiet in the early afternoon, with only a few customers scattered across the tables. Sunlight fell softly through the large windows, lighting up the polished wooden floors and the neatly arranged tables. The smell of freshly baked bread and simmering sauces mixed together, creating a comforting atmosphere that made people feel at home. Behind the counter, a young waitress moved with calm efficiency, carrying plates of food, refilling drinks, and offering a warm smile to every guest. She had worked here for several years, and her routine was well practiced, yet she never seemed tired or distracted. Each movement was careful and precise, showing the patience that came from experience and a deep sense of responsibility. Her life outside the restaurant was not easy. She lived alone in a small apartment, balancing her work with the needs of her family. She often helped her younger siblings, made sure her parents had everything they needed, and managed her own daily chores. She rarely complained, even when her day was long or difficult. To the world, she seemed ordinary, just another face among the staff. But those who paid attention could see a quiet strength in her eyes, a calm determination that made her stand out without words. The boss of the restaurant was a strict man, known for his sharp eye and careful management. He watched the restaurant like a hawk, noticing small details that others missed. Some employees felt nervous around him, afraid of being corrected or judged. Yet he was not unkind. He valued hard work and honesty above all else, and he had a way of recognizing those who carried themselves with integrity. On this particular afternoon, he observed the young waitress as she went from table to table, noting how she remembered each guest's preferences, spoke politely, and moved with a quiet confidence. There was something different about her, a subtle care that set her apart from others. A group of regular customers had come in and were chatting among themselves, their voices soft but lively. The waitress approached with a gentle smile, asking if they wanted anything more and refilling their water glasses. She listened to their requests carefully, repeating them back to make sure she got everything right. She did not rush, even though there were orders waiting to be prepared in the kitchen. Her calm presence seemed to create a sense of ease in the room. The customers appreciated it, commenting quietly among themselves about how polite and attentive she was. Little did they know that her patience and warmth came not just from training but from life experiences that had taught her how to stay composed in any situation. The boss moved silently across the room, observing from a distance. He had been running the restaurant for many years, and he thought he had seen everything. Yet, there was something about the way this young waitress handled herself that caught his attention. It was not just her efficiency or politeness. It was the way she treated every person with respect, as if each interaction mattered. He noticed the small gestures, how she leaned slightly when listening, how she remembered a guest's favorite table, how she seemed to sense when someone needed a little extra care. He could tell she put genuine effort into every action, and it made him curious. He wanted to know more about her, to understand what drove this quiet dedication. In the kitchen, the cooks moved quickly, calling out orders and coordinating with each other. The waitress passed through, taking plates and placing them carefully on her tray. She balanced everything with grace, careful not to spill or drop anything. Her co-workers respected her for her skills, though few truly understood her inner world. She rarely spoke about herself, keeping her personal life private. Her demeanor was calm, approachable, and reliable, and it made her someone people naturally trusted. Even when the kitchen became hectic, she maintained a steady pace, showing a quiet resilience that impressed everyone who watched. As the afternoon continued, the restaurant slowly filled with more guests. Families, couples, and individuals came in, each looking for a comfortable place to enjoy their meals. The waitress greeted each one with a warm smile, taking their orders and making sure they felt welcomed. She knew how important it was to make people feel comfortable, even in small ways. A smile, a kind word, a small gesture could change someone's day, and she understood that deeply. She moved from table to table with a calm rhythm, never seeming hurried or distracted, even as the pace quickened. The boss watched silently, thinking about his own experiences and the way people often go unnoticed despite their efforts. He reflected on the young waitress's dedication, wondering what had shaped her into the person she was. He noticed the way she handled a young child at a nearby table, speaking gently and helping the child feel at ease. He saw how she remembered a regular guest's favorite drink without being asked. He realized that she was not just performing her duties. She was connecting with people in a way that went beyond the job description. It was something rare and valuable. A moment came when a difficult customer arrived, someone known for being demanding and impatient. Most staff would feel stressed, but the waitress approached with calm confidence. She listened carefully, nodded politely, and responded with patience. She did not let frustration show, even when the guest complained about a minor mistake. Her demeanor softened the tension, and soon the customer was satisfied, smiling as they left the table. The boss noticed the interaction and felt a mix of admiration and curiosity. He wanted to understand her approach, the source of her calm and thoughtful responses. After serving several more tables, the waitress finally had a brief moment to catch her breath. She wiped her hands on her apron and leaned slightly against the counter, observing the restaurant with a quiet sense of pride. Despite the long hours and constant movement, she felt a sense of fulfillment. Each day was a challenge, but it was also an opportunity to make a difference, even in small ways. Her eyes met the boss's for a moment, and she gave a polite nod, acknowledging his presence. He returned the gesture, feeling an unexpected sense of respect for her. The boss walked over to her, stopping for a moment before speaking. He wanted to ask a question, one that seemed simple but would reveal more than words could describe. He hesitated, thinking about how to approach her without causing discomfort. The moment felt delicate, almost like a quiet pause in the rhythm of the busy restaurant. Guests continued their conversations, unaware that something important was about to happen. The waitress noticed him and straightened slightly, sensing that he had something to say. He asked the question calmly, almost as if testing the waters. The words were simple, but they carried an unexpected weight. The waitress paused for a moment, considering her answer carefully. She did not rush, did not hesitate, but chose her response with thought and honesty. The boss watched closely, trying to read her expression, to understand what lay behind the calm exterior. The guests nearby noticed the interaction, sensing a subtle tension in the air. It was a quiet moment, yet it held a significance that could not be ignored. Her answer came softly but with clarity. It was honest, straightforward, and touched on something deeper than the question itself. The boss felt a shift inside him, a realization that he had not expected. He understood, in that moment, that there was more to this young waitress than met the eye. She carried experiences, strength, and wisdom that were hidden beneath her calm exterior. The restaurant seemed to pause for a heartbeat, as if the world recognized the significance of the simple exchange. As she returned to her duties, the boss continued to watch, reflecting on what he had just learned. He felt a growing respect for her resilience and the quiet determination that shaped her actions. Guests resumed their conversations, unaware of the insight they had witnessed. The young waitress moved from table to table, still attentive, still patient, and still warm. Yet now, there was a sense of recognition in the air, a silent acknowledgement that her efforts were seen and valued. The afternoon passed, and the restaurant slowly moved toward the evening rush. The young waitress continued her work with the same dedication, carrying plates, taking orders, and offering smiles. Her presence had a calming effect, creating an environment where people felt welcome and cared for. The boss, now observing with a new perspective, realized that he had underestimated the power of simple human connection. He had learned that sometimes the smallest gestures and the quietest people could leave the deepest impact. By the time the day was over, the restaurant had settled into a calm rhythm again. Guests left with satisfied smiles, staff completed their duties, and the young waitress finally had a chance to rest. She leaned against the counter, reflecting on the day, unaware of the effect she had on those around her. Her actions, guided by patience, empathy, and quiet strength, had made a difference without fanfare. The boss, watching her with a thoughtful gaze, knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would soon reveal itself. The small question he had asked and the answer she gave had opened a door, one that would lead to understanding, respect, and a surprising journey that no one in the restaurant could have anticipated. The restaurant had grown busier as the evening approached. The warm glow from the overhead lights made the space feel inviting, and the chatter of guests filled the air with a soft hum. The young waitress moved through the tables with steady grace, carrying plates of food, refilling drinks, and listening carefully to requests. Every guest felt like they mattered, and her calm presence brought a sense of ease to the room. Even the regular customers noticed the way she remembered small details, like favorite drinks and seating preferences. It was clear that her care went beyond simply doing a job. She paid attention because she genuinely wanted to make people feel comfortable. The boss watched her from a distance, leaning against the wall near the counter. He had observed her for months, but today something made him decide it was time to speak to her directly. He had seen how effortlessly she handled the busy hours, how she managed difficult customers without complaint, and how she treated everyone with respect. He had a question in mind, a simple question that most people would not think twice about, but he sensed that her answer would reveal something more. As he approached, he noticed her calm focus, the way she moved as if nothing could disturb her rhythm. He stood beside her for a moment, waiting for a pause in her tasks. The kitchen was busy, cooks calling out orders and coordinating with each other, while guests continued their conversations. It was a normal evening, yet the moment felt important, almost suspended in time. The boss cleared his throat and asked, in a tone that was casual but carried a quiet curiosity, a simple question about her work, something most people would consider ordinary. The waitress paused for a moment, tilting her head slightly as she considered the question. Her eyes showed a calm intelligence, a careful thoughtfulness. She answered honestly, with no hint of pretension or exaggeration, speaking in a soft, steady voice. Her response was straightforward, yet it carried an unexpected depth. She spoke not just about the surface of her work, but about the reasons behind her actions. It was clear she had thought about her responsibilities, about the impact of small gestures, and about the value of treating every person with care. Her words were simple, yet they resonated in a way that made the boss pause. The guests nearby began to notice the interaction. They did not hear the entire question or answer, but they sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The calm, respectful tone of the waitress, combined with the attentive stance of the boss, created a quiet tension. People stopped their own conversations for a moment, curious about what was unfolding. Even the regular customers, familiar with the usual routines of the restaurant, felt that something different was happening. It was a small moment, yet it held an unexpected weight, the kind of moment that could not be ignored. Her answer touched on aspects of life and work that went beyond the restaurant. She spoke of patience, understanding, and the importance of listening. She shared small insights about her experiences, revealing challenges she had faced and the lessons she had learned. Her words were honest and unguarded, yet she did not overshare or seek sympathy. She simply spoke from the perspective of someone who had lived through struggles and had chosen to approach life with dignity and care. The boss listened closely, realizing that her answer carried wisdom far beyond her years. A hush seemed to settle over the area around them. The kitchen staff, busy with their tasks, glanced over occasionally, sensing that something significant was happening. Guests leaned slightly forward, curious and attentive. The young waitress returned to her work after answering, but her calm confidence lingered in the air. The boss, standing nearby, reflected on what he had just heard. He realized that he had underestimated her, that the quiet strength she displayed day after day had been hiding deeper experiences and a remarkable character. The boss began to ask himself questions he had not considered before. How many other employees had similar hidden strengths? How many people he worked with every day carried stories that he would never know unless he took the time to listen? He thought about his own assumptions, the way he had judged people quickly based on appearances or brief interactions. Her answer had quietly challenged those assumptions, opening his mind to a new perspective. It was not just a lesson about her. It was a lesson about human nature and the importance of paying attention to the people around him. As the evening progressed, the restaurant became busier with families, couples, and friends arriving for dinner. The young waitress continued her work with the same calm efficiency. She moved from table to table, taking orders, refilling drinks, and offering smiles. Her answer to the boss's question had not changed her demeanor. If anything, it had reinforced her quiet strength. She carried herself with patience and care, aware that every small action mattered. Guests noticed her attention to detail, and even those who had only just arrived could feel the warmth she brought to the room. The boss remained nearby, observing and reflecting. He watched how she handled a small crisis at a table where a child had spilled a drink. Most employees would have reacted with frustration or rushed to clean up. She, however, knelt down to the child's level, spoke kindly, and quickly solved the problem without creating embarrassment or tension. It was a simple act, yet it spoke volumes about her character. The boss felt a growing respect for her, realizing that her answer to his question had only scratched the surface of her remarkable qualities. Throughout the evening, other staff began to notice the shift in the boss's attitude. They saw him watching the young waitress more closely, observing not just her efficiency but the way she connected with guests. The atmosphere in the restaurant subtly changed. Staff became more aware of their own interactions, seeing the impact of patience, kindness, and genuine attention. It was as if her simple honesty had created a ripple effect, encouraging everyone to reflect on the way they treated others. Guests continued to comment on the quality of service, noting the genuine care in each interaction. Some approached the waitress with questions or compliments, sensing her warmth and attentiveness. She responded with the same calm demeanor, listening carefully and speaking politely. Her presence created a sense of trust and comfort. Even those who had been having a difficult day found themselves relaxing in the atmosphere she helped create. It was a subtle, powerful influence that went beyond the usual expectations of service. At one point, a regular guest leaned slightly toward another and whispered about the exchange between the boss and the waitress. They speculated quietly, intrigued by the calm seriousness of the moment. The curiosity spread, not in a disruptive way, but as an unspoken recognition that something meaningful had occurred. People were drawn to authenticity, to honesty, and to character that shone without needing attention or praise. The waitress embodied all of these qualities, and the simple answer she had given made the impact even stronger. As the night continued, the pace of the restaurant did not slow. Orders came in steadily, plates went out, and guests enjoyed their meals. Yet the memory of that brief exchange lingered. The boss thought about how rare it was to encounter such authenticity, such quiet strength, in the midst of everyday life. He reflected on the importance of taking time to listen, to observe, and to understand the people who surround him. He realized that a single question, asked at the right moment, could reveal truths far deeper than he had imagined. Finally, as the evening began to wind down, the restaurant settled into a quieter rhythm. Guests finished their meals and left with smiles. Staff completed their duties, and the young waitress had a chance to pause for a moment. She leaned against the counter, taking a breath, her calm energy intact. The boss approached her again, this time with a look of genuine appreciation. He did not need to ask another question. He had already learned much from the first. Yet he wanted to acknowledge her quietly, letting her know that her honesty and dedication had not gone unnoticed. Her eyes met his, and she gave a small, polite nod, returning the gesture without fanfare. The moment was simple, but it carried weight. It was a recognition of effort, of integrity, and of the quiet resilience that defined her character. The boss walked away, thoughtful and inspired, understanding that this young waitress had given more than an answer to a question. She had offered a glimpse into a way of living with care, patience, and authenticity. The night ended with the restaurant closing, dishes cleaned, tables wiped, and staff preparing to leave. The young waitress gathered her belongings, reflecting on the day with quiet satisfaction. She had done her work with care as she always did, and yet this evening felt different. There had been a moment when her honesty had been truly seen, a moment when her simple words had made an impact. It was a reminder that even in ordinary circumstances, small actions and honest answers could create meaningful connections. As she walked home through the quiet streets, she thought about the day, the guests, and the boss's question. She understood that life often presented opportunities to show character, patience, and care, even when no one seemed to notice. She smiled softly, carrying the feeling of quiet accomplishment with her. The simple question and her honest answer had shifted perspectives, not with drama or noise, but with authenticity and thoughtfulness. It was a reminder that real strength often comes in subtle, everyday moments, and that every person carries a story worth seeing and hearing. The following days in the restaurant moved with a familiar rhythm, yet there was a new sense of curiosity lingering in the air. The boss had not stopped thinking about the young waitress's answer to his simple question. He found himself reflecting on the honesty, thoughtfulness, and quiet wisdom she had shared. Her words had made a subtle but strong impression, prompting him to reconsider how he viewed the people who worked under him. He realized that behind the calm demeanor and polite smiles, there were lives filled with experiences, challenges, and stories he would never know unless he took the time to listen. The thought lingered with him, growing stronger with each passing day. The waitress continued her duties with her usual patience and attentiveness. She greeted guests warmly, took orders with careful attention, and moved through the busy tables with ease. Her coworkers noticed a difference in the way the boss interacted with her, a small but noticeable respect that had not been there before. She remained humble, unaffected by the attention, focusing on the work at hand and the needs of the guests. Yet, the quiet curiosity surrounding her grew, and people began to wonder more about the person behind the calm exterior. It was during a slow moment in the restaurant that fragments of her past began to emerge, not through her words directly, but through the way she carried herself. Guests and staff noticed her interactions, small gestures that hinted at a life shaped by challenges and perseverance. She remembered the preferences of every guest, not just because it was her job, but because she had learned to pay attention to details that mattered in life. She offered comfort to those who seemed upset, listening carefully to their concerns, and sometimes offering small words of encouragement. These acts were natural for her, born from experiences that had taught her the importance of kindness, patience, and understanding. In private moments, she reflected on her own journey. Life had not been easy. From a young age, she had faced responsibilities that many of her peers had not. Family obligations, financial challenges, and personal sacrifices had taught her the value of hard work and resilience. There had been times when she felt overwhelmed and considered giving up, yet she found strength in small victories, in the moments when she could make a difference, however minor it seemed. These experiences had shaped her into someone who approached life with humility, empathy, and a quiet determination. Her past also explained her unique approach to her work. She treated each guest as a person, not just a customer, because she understood the importance of being seen and valued. She knew that a smile, a kind word, or a thoughtful gesture could lift someone's spirits, and she applied these lessons every day. Her calm and composed manner was not just professional training. It was a reflection of her lived experiences and the resilience she had built over the years. Every action was deliberate, every interaction meaningful, though she did not seek recognition or praise. The boss began to notice subtle patterns in her behavior that hinted at this hidden past. The way she handled difficult guests, the patience she showed under pressure, and the empathy she displayed were all signs of someone who had faced and overcome challenges in life. He realized that her answer to his simple question had only scratched the surface. There was a depth to her character that could not be expressed in a single conversation. He became increasingly curious, wanting to understand more about the person he had long taken for granted as just another employee. During a busy afternoon, a situation arose that highlighted the young waitress's inner strength. A customer became upset over a minor mistake, raising their voice and creating tension in the dining area. Most staff would have felt flustered or defensive, but she approached calmly, listening to the concerns without interruption. She acknowledged the issue respectfully and found a solution that satisfied the customer. What stood out was not just her efficiency in resolving the problem, but her ability to maintain composure and empathy, even in the face of frustration. The boss watched, silently impressed, realizing that these actions reflected a lifetime of understanding and patience. Her coworkers began to observe her more closely, noticing how she balanced tasks and interactions with a quiet grace. They saw how she anticipated needs without being asked, remembered details from previous visits, and provided comfort to those who seemed stressed or anxious. She became a subtle example of resilience and emotional intelligence, demonstrating that strength was not always loud or assertive. The staff began to reflect on their own behaviors, inspired by her calm competence and thoughtful approach. The regular guests also began to notice the difference. They appreciated not just the service, but the genuine care behind it. Many of them commented on her attentiveness, her warm demeanor, and the way she made each person feel valued. They sensed that her actions were guided by more than routine. They were shaped by an understanding of life and human connection. Even new visitors felt welcomed in a way that went beyond basic hospitality, experiencing a sense of comfort and respect that lingered in their memory long after they left. The boss, too, began to reflect on his own leadership. He realized that he had often focused solely on efficiency, rules, and performance, overlooking the human stories behind the employees. The young waitress's example prompted him to reconsider how he interacted with his staff, encouraging him to pay attention to their efforts, struggles, and strengths. He understood that recognizing character and integrity could inspire loyalty, respect, and a positive environment in ways that policies alone never could. One quiet afternoon, as the restaurant slowed, he decided to approach her again, not with questions but with curiosity about her journey. He wanted to understand the experiences that had shaped her, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. He approached respectfully, mindful not to pry or make her uncomfortable. She greeted him politely, her calm composure unchanged. Yet there was an openness in her demeanor that allowed a conversation to unfold naturally. She spoke briefly about the importance of patience, resilience, and empathy in her life, not as a complaint but as an explanation of her approach to work and people. She shared insights into how she managed responsibilities, overcame obstacles, and maintained a sense of balance despite challenges. Her words were simple and direct, yet they conveyed depth and wisdom. The boss listened attentively, realizing that her experiences had shaped a character that was both rare and admirable. As the conversation continued, small details emerged that gave insight into her determination. She had faced moments of doubt, days when the weight of responsibilities felt heavy, yet she had always found ways to move forward. She valued dignity, integrity, and the ability to make small differences in the lives of others. The boss recognized that these qualities were reflected in every interaction she had, from handling difficult guests to providing quiet support to coworkers. Her answer to his simple question now made perfect sense, as it had been informed by a lifetime of thoughtful experience. The guests who happened to overhear snippets of the conversation became curious, sensing that the young waitress's story was remarkable. Even though she spoke quietly, her honesty and humility carried weight. People began to reflect on their own assumptions, realizing that everyone has hidden stories, unseen challenges, and strengths that may not be immediately visible. The restaurant, once just a place for meals, became a space of human connection, understanding, and quiet admiration. Throughout the day, she continued her work with her usual patience and attention to detail. She greeted new guests, remembered familiar faces, and maintained the calm, composed demeanor that had become her signature. The boss observed silently, taking mental notes on how character and experience shaped behavior in ways that formal training could not. He saw how authenticity, empathy, and resilience could transform ordinary tasks into meaningful interactions, creating a positive environment for everyone. As the evening approached, the rhythm of the restaurant remained steady. Guests enjoyed their meals, staff worked efficiently, and the young waitress moved gracefully among them all. She embodied a quiet strength that touched everyone she interacted with, leaving subtle but lasting impressions. Her story, revealed in fragments, had begun to change perceptions, not through dramatic events, but through the simple power of authenticity and thoughtful action. The boss reflected on the lessons he had learned. He realized that leadership was not just about managing tasks and ensuring efficiency. It was about recognizing human stories, valuing effort, and fostering an environment where people felt seen and respected. The young waitress had demonstrated that true strength often comes quietly, in small actions and thoughtful decisions. Her life experiences had shaped her into someone who could inspire others without speaking loudly or seeking attention. By the time the restaurant began to close for the night, the atmosphere was calm and reflective. The guests had left, satisfied and perhaps carrying a new sense of appreciation for the care they had received. The staff had completed their duties, influenced subtly by the example of the young waitress. She gathered her belongings, ready to leave, yet her presence had already left a lasting impression on those around her. As she walked home, she thought about the day and the moments that had unfolded. She reflected on the quiet power of honesty, empathy, and resilience. The simple question from the boss had opened a door, not just for recognition, but for understanding, connection, and appreciation. She smiled softly, knowing that life was full of small moments that could reveal character, inspire change, and create bonds between people. The story of her journey was still unfolding, and she moved forward with the quiet confidence that had always guided her, ready to face the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The next week at the restaurant began like any other, but there was an unspoken change in the air. The boss had been thinking constantly about the young waitress, about the honesty and depth she had shown when answering his simple question. He realized that he had overlooked something important for too long. Most employees went about their tasks quietly, performing duties without asking for recognition. She, however, had a presence that was more than just her work. It was the way she approached life, even in small actions that made a difference. He found himself watching her not just as an employee but as a person whose story deserved attention. The waitress moved among the tables with her usual calm efficiency, offering smiles and warm words to the guests. She carried trays with precision and seemed to notice everything happening in the room. The empty glass on one table, a child looking bored, a couple quietly celebrating an anniversary. Her awareness was subtle but impactful. Guests responded naturally to her care, feeling a quiet connection that went beyond mere service. Some regulars whispered to each other about her kindness, wondering how someone could maintain such patience and composure under constant pressure. It was during a particularly busy hour that the boss noticed a small interaction that highlighted her unique qualities. A guest had accidentally dropped a napkin, and the waitress bent down immediately, picked it up, and handed it back with a gentle smile. The guest looked embarrassed but quickly relaxed, smiling back. Most staff would have handled it mechanically, but she treated it with thoughtfulness, making the guest feel respected rather than self-conscious. The boss realized that these small gestures were the building blocks of her impact. It wasn't just efficiency, it was empathy and human connection at work. The boss began to consider the broader implications of her behavior. Leadership, he realized, was not just about rules and performance. It was about understanding people, noticing effort, and valuing character. The waitress had quietly demonstrated these principles through her own actions. He thought about how many employees might be carrying hidden strengths, untold stories, and lessons that he had yet to recognize. Her answer to his simple question had opened a window, and now he felt compelled to act on the insight it had provided. Later, when a moment of calm arrived in the restaurant, he approached her quietly. He did not want to disrupt her workflow but felt it was the right time to acknowledge her efforts. He spoke in a tone that was gentle and respectful, commenting on the way she treated the guests and handled her responsibilities. She listened politely, responding with her usual humility. She did not boast or seek praise, but there was a quiet pride in her demeanor, a sense of satisfaction that came from doing her work well and making a difference in small, meaningful ways. As the conversation continued, she shared a little more about why she approached her work this way. She spoke about her experiences growing up, the responsibilities she had carried, and the lessons she had learned about patience, respect, and kindness. She did not dwell on hardships but used them to explain the values that guided her life. Her words were simple, direct, and filled with a quiet wisdom. The boss listened intently, realizing that these experiences were the foundation of her character, and that her approach to her job was an extension of the way she lived her life. Around them, The staff and guests were unaware of the full conversation, but they sensed the importance of the moment. Even small gestures, like the way the boss and waitress interacted, conveyed respect and thoughtfulness. The atmosphere in the restaurant felt subtly transformed, as if the recognition of character had created a ripple effect. Employees worked with a renewed sense of awareness, guests felt more valued, and the overall environment became more attentive and human-centered. Later that evening, another situation arose that highlighted her qualities. A guest had a complaint about an order, a minor mistake that could easily have escalated into tension. The waitress approached calmly, listened carefully, and addressed the issue with patience and empathy. She explained the solution, reassured the guest, and even added a small gesture to make them feel valued. By the end of the interaction, the guest left satisfied and smiling. The boss observed, realizing that her effectiveness came not from authority or control but from understanding and connection. She influenced people through respect and attentiveness, not through rules or pressure. Her coworkers began to notice the impact as well. Some of them started adjusting their own approach to guests, inspired by her calm and thoughtful manner. They saw that kindness and patience could be powerful tools in managing stress and creating positive experiences. The young waitress, without consciously trying, had become a model for behavior, demonstrating that strength and influence could be quiet, subtle, and consistent. Her actions encouraged reflection and growth in others, showing that leadership and impact could come from anyone, regardless of their position. The boss found himself making small changes based on what he had observed. He began paying more attention to his employees, noticing efforts that might have been overlooked before. He recognized that acknowledging human stories and supporting character could improve the overall environment of the restaurant, boosting morale and creating a more positive atmosphere for both staff and guests. He realized that the young waitress had provided him with an invaluable lesson about observation, recognition, and empathy. As the week continued, the pattern of positive influence continued to grow. Guests remarked on the quality of service, often mentioning the young waitress by name. Her ability to connect and make each person feel seen and valued became part of the restaurant's identity. Even those who had previously been indifferent or critical found themselves appreciating the subtle attentiveness and care she brought to her work. The boss noticed these reactions and felt a sense of pride and understanding, knowing that he had been part of witnessing something genuinely human and remarkable. During quieter moments, she reflected on the changes around her. She had not sought recognition, yet she noticed the subtle respect from the boss and the way coworkers began emulating her behavior. She thought about the lessons she had learned from life, about responsibility, perseverance, and care for others, and saw how those lessons were now influencing her surroundings. It was a quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose that came from knowing that small actions could have meaningful impact. One evening, a customer left a note with their bill, thanking the waitress for her kindness and attention. They mentioned how her patience and thoughtfulness had made their visit special, noting that it was rare to encounter such genuine care. She read the note quietly, a soft smile forming on her face. It was not about praise, but about acknowledgement that her actions mattered and were noticed. She placed the note gently in her apron pocket, carrying it as a reminder of the quiet power of empathy and authenticity. The boss, observing these small moments, realized the full significance of what he had witnessed. Leadership was not only about managing staff or maintaining standards. It was about creating an environment where people felt respected, valued, and understood. The young waitress had taught him this lesson through her own example, without seeking recognition or reward. Her answer to the simple question had been a glimpse into a life guided by principles, a reflection of character that quietly influenced everyone around her. As the days turned into weeks, the young waitress continued her work with the same dedication and calm presence. Guests noticed, coworkers were inspired, and the boss remained thoughtful and reflective. The restaurant, once a place of routine, had become a space of subtle influence, learning, and connection. The young waitress's actions had created a ripple effect, reminding everyone that even small gestures, honesty, and integrity could leave a lasting impression. By the end of the week, the boss made a decision. He wanted to ensure that her contributions were recognized in a meaningful way, not through public praise or material reward, but through acknowledgement of her efforts, trust in her abilities, and a respect for the character she consistently demonstrated. He approached her one evening, thanking her quietly for the example she had set and the lessons she had imparted through her actions. She responded with her usual humility, grateful for the recognition but focused on continuing her work with care and thoughtfulness. The atmosphere in the restaurant settled into a steady rhythm, yet there was a new sense of awareness among everyone present. Guests felt appreciated, staff felt inspired, and the boss felt a renewed understanding of what leadership and human connection truly meant. The young waitress moved gracefully among the tables, her calm composure intact, yet her impact continued to grow, shaping the environment in ways that were quiet, subtle, and lasting. As she walked home that night, she thought about the week, the interactions, and the small gestures that had shaped the environment. She reflected on the lessons she had carried with her from life, the importance of patience, empathy, and integrity, and how those principles had influenced her surroundings. She felt a sense of quiet satisfaction, knowing that authenticity, honesty, and thoughtful action could create change, inspire others, and leave a lasting impression, even without fanfare or attention. Life, she realized, was often about these subtle moments, the small choices that defined character and influenced the world in meaningful ways. The restaurant had settled into its usual rhythm as the evening began. The soft hum of conversation, the clinking of plates, and the warm lighting created a sense of calm that contrasted with the earlier rush of the day. The young waitress moved among the tables with her familiar grace, attending to each guest with patience and attentiveness. Her presence was comforting, and those who had been there before could sense the quiet strength she carried with her. She did not seek attention or recognition, yet the impact of her actions had grown in ways that were noticeable to everyone in the room. The boss observed her from a distance, reflecting on the past weeks. He had learned much from her, lessons about patience, empathy, and the value of paying attention to people's stories. He recognized that leadership was not only about managing work but also about understanding character, acknowledging effort, and fostering an environment where people felt seen. Her answer to his simple question had been a catalyst, opening his eyes to the depth of her experiences and the subtle power of authenticity. He felt a renewed respect for her, and it influenced the way he approached both staff and guests. During a busy evening, a family came in, carrying an air of exhaustion and tension. The young waitress greeted them warmly, guiding them to a table and offering a menu with a gentle smile. She could sense that the parents were stressed and the children restless. Without drawing attention to it, she engaged the children with small gestures, asking about their favorite foods, making light jokes, and showing genuine interest in their answers. She spoke to the parents with respect and kindness, offering reassurance and making them feel valued. By the end of the meal, the family was relaxed, smiling, and appreciative of the care they had received. The boss watched quietly, noting once again how her approach created comfort and connection effortlessly. Other staff members had begun to notice subtle shifts in themselves. Inspired by her example, they started paying closer attention to their interactions with guests, anticipating needs and responding with genuine care. The atmosphere in the restaurant had changed. It was no longer just about serving food efficiently, but about creating experiences where people felt acknowledged and respected. The young waitress's quiet leadership influenced those around her without a single command or instruction. Her actions, consistent and thoughtful, had become a model of behavior that others wanted to emulate. One evening, an older guest who had been a regular for years approached the boss privately. He spoke of the young waitress, noting how her patience, attention, and kindness made visits to the restaurant memorable. The guest mentioned that such care was rare and that it left a lasting impression, making people feel valued in ways that went beyond a simple meal. The boss listened intently, realizing that he had been witness to a remarkable example of character and integrity. He felt proud, not just as an employer, but as someone who had the privilege of observing her impact firsthand. Meanwhile, the young waitress continued to perform her duties with her usual calm efficiency. She managed multiple tasks simultaneously, serving food, answering questions, and ensuring that guests had everything they needed. Her focus never wavered, yet she remained approachable and warm. Each action she took, no matter how small, carried a sense of purpose and care. Guests could feel it even if they did not consciously recognize it. Her authenticity radiated quietly, leaving subtle but meaningful impressions on everyone she encountered. The boss decided it was time to make a small gesture of recognition. He approached her during a brief lull and thanked her sincerely for the example she had set, for the care she brought to her work, and for the positive influence she had on both staff and guests. She listened politely, accepting his words with humility, her expression calm but appreciative. It was a quiet acknowledgement, yet it carried weight, symbolizing the respect she had earned through consistent dedication and thoughtful action. She did not boast or seek more recognition, understanding that her fulfillment came from the work itself and the subtle impact she had on others. As the evening progressed, the restaurant continued to receive compliments from guests. People commented on the attentiveness of the staff, the warmth of the atmosphere, and the personal touches that made their experience special. Many specifically mentioned the young waitress, noting her patience, empathy, and the genuine care she showed. Her consistent presence had become a defining feature of the restaurant, creating a sense of connection and satisfaction that extended beyond the food and service. Guests left with smiles, feeling remembered and valued, and some even shared stories of their interactions with friends and family, spreading the appreciation further. Back in the kitchen, her co-workers reflected on the subtle changes that had occurred. They saw how her behavior influenced the overall environment, encouraging a culture of attentiveness and respect. Staff members began to adopt similar approaches in their interactions with guests, learning from her example without formal instruction. The young waitress's quiet leadership had created a ripple effect, transforming not just the dining experience but also the dynamics among the staff. Her actions demonstrated that true influence comes from consistency, thoughtfulness, and empathy rather than authority or force. Later that night, as the restaurant began to close, the young waitress took a moment to reflect on the week. She thought about the guests she had interacted with, the positive responses she had witnessed, and the small ways her actions had influenced others. She considered the lessons she had learned through her own life experiences, patience, resilience, and kindness, and how they had guided her work. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her approach had created meaningful moments for both guests and co-workers. It was a reminder that even small gestures, performed with sincerity, could leave lasting impressions. The boss walked by one final time before leaving, nodding respectfully. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition of the value of character, integrity, and quiet influence. He had learned much from observing her about human nature, leadership, and the impact of thoughtful action. Her answer to his simple question had set in motion a series of changes, subtly influencing the restaurant environment and inspiring those around her. He realized that sometimes the most profound lessons come from ordinary people who act with honesty and care. As she left the restaurant that night, she walked through the quiet streets, reflecting on the day. She thought about the guests who had smiled, the colleagues who had noticed her example, and the boss who had acknowledged her quietly. She understood that life was often shaped by small, consistent actions and the way one treated others. There was no need for dramatic gestures or grand announcements. The power of authenticity, patience, and empathy could transform lives and create connections in ways that were deeply meaningful yet subtle. She also considered the ongoing journey ahead. Her work at the restaurant was not just a job. It was a space where she could practice the values she held dear, where her actions could have a positive impact on others, and where her quiet strength could be recognized without needing to assert itself. Each day brought new opportunities to demonstrate care, to make small differences, and to leave lasting impressions on people who might otherwise go unnoticed. The realization was both humbling and empowering, giving her a renewed sense of purpose. The story of the young waitress, her simple yet profound answer, and the influence she had on those around her was a reminder that life often reveals its most meaningful lessons through ordinary moments. Small actions, performed with honesty and integrity, can ripple outward, touching people in ways that are not immediately visible but deeply felt. Guests carried memories of her care, coworkers adjusted their own behaviors in subtle ways, and the boss learned to see and value the human qualities that shaped the environment. The impact of one person's quiet strength can extend far beyond what is immediately apparent, creating change, understanding, and respect. As she approached her small apartment, she felt a sense of peace. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that every day presented opportunities to demonstrate patience, empathy, and authenticity. The recognition she had received from the boss and the appreciation from guests and coworkers were meaningful, but they were secondary to the satisfaction she found in her own actions and the quiet influence she had on those around her. Life, she reflected, was often about these subtle, consistent moments that revealed character and touched lives in ways that mattered deeply. That night, she rested with a sense of accomplishment, not because of accolades or attention, but because she had acted with integrity, care, and authenticity throughout the day. Her simple answer to a question had set in motion a series of events that transformed perspectives, influenced behaviors, and highlighted the importance of human connection. She understood that true impact often comes quietly, through everyday actions, and that living with patience, honesty, and empathy could create a lasting difference in the world. In the days that followed, the restaurant continued to thrive, not only because of its food or service, but because of the environment of respect, attentiveness, and empathy that the young waitress had helped cultivate. Guests returned, feeling valued and welcomed, and staff members worked with a renewed sense of purpose and awareness. The boss continued to reflect on the lessons he had learned, recognizing that leadership was enriched by understanding and acknowledging the human stories behind the work. The ripple effect of her actions persisted, shaping the restaurant in subtle yet meaningful ways. The young waitress's story became an example of how ordinary people, through consistency, honesty, and care, can influence others profoundly. Her answer to a simple question had revealed not only her character, but also the importance of empathy, attentiveness, and respect in everyday life. The restaurant had become more than a place to eat. It had become a space where human connection, understanding, and quiet leadership were visible in small, meaningful gestures. The impact of one person's dedication and integrity continued to inspire everyone who encountered it, leaving a lasting impression that extended far beyond the walls of the restaurant. And so, the young waitress continued her work with calm determination, mindful of the lessons she had learned and the influence she carried. She knew that every day presented opportunities to make a difference, to connect with others, and to act with integrity. The simple question and her thoughtful answer had changed not just the way the boss saw her, but how the restaurant functioned, how the staff interacted, and how guests experienced the space. Life's most powerful moments, she realized, often come quietly, through honesty, empathy, and the small but consistent acts that define character and touch the lives of those around us.